So recently you had everybody and their mother talking about these stimulus checks, and you had people talking about the EIDL loan, you had people talking about the actual stimulus checks that we were all getting, the $1,200, and now you have people talking about what the next step is and what the next thing that we're going to see is. And you had all types of YouTubers, from MeetKevin, Graham Stephan, ClearValueTax, Brian Jung. Every financial YouTuber on the platform has been talking about whether we're going to get the next stimulus check, what we're going to see in it, and kind of what we can expect from the government in terms of our next stimulus plan. And I've been watching a lot of their videos. I agree with some and I disagree with others, but I think overall what we should be concerned with is that I don't think we really want another stimulus check, and I don't think we should want another stimulus check. ClearValueTax actually laid out a really good argument for why we should be concerned about our debt and about the amount of spending that we're doing. And I think a lot of items were misconstrued in people's videos, like Brian Jung and MeetKevin. And MeetKevin actually attempted to put it out into the YouTube sphere and say everybody should add their opinions. And I think the same thing. I think a lot of MeetKevin's content is really good, but I think that on this particular point, he was a little bit misguided. I think we should explore why we may not actually want those stimulus checks after all. And so that's what I plan to do. The first thing I think we should consider is the tax ramifications. So one thing that a lot of people aren't really considering is how they worded the bill originally for our $1,200 stimulus check. So the way that they worded it is in advance of a tax credit. So what that means for me personally is that we are going to end up paying Uncle Sam for this. We think about that $1,200 as just free money that the government gave out and is not going to ask for it back. And in essence, that's sort of true, but it actually really isn't. The way that the government most likely will deal with this problem is that in 2021 or maybe 2022, we're going to see a raise in our taxes in some capacity. People aren't really concerned with that right now because everybody loves the fact that they're getting $1,200 completely for free. But down the line, it is definitely something that people need to be concerned with. Another thing that I think we should really be concerned with is this concept of inflation. ClearValueTax actually talked about it a little bit in his video, and MeetKevin and Brian Jung sort of expanded on it a little bit more. What the government is doing to actually pay for these stimulus checks and everything else that they're doing is they're actually selling United States debt. This is a piece that everyone was kind of misconstruing. So in MeetKevin's video, he talked about how we sold a lot of debt in World War II. I think that's completely off base. In World War II, we were actually on what's called the gold standard. So our money was actually backed by physical bars of gold. And after about 1960-ish, I believe, we went off of the gold standard and we went just based on credit alone. And that's when our debt significantly started to ramp up. Although we don't need to really be worried about it right now, I think it's a major issue that people are kind of writing off the amount of debt that we're selling and the ramifications of inflation down the line. MeetKevin started to talk about the fact that our government is based on an accounting balance sheet. And while that's true, you can't really think about things as being dead even, because ideally we would want to pay off a lot of the debts that we are currently selling. And then by extension, what he's saying is correct. We're selling all of this debt, so now we need to start printing more money. As a result, we are going to see higher rates of inflation down the line. MeetKevin looked at it as saying, well, right now we're not really seeing large inflation, and in fact, in some cases, we're seeing the opposite of that. But down the line, we are 100% going to see inflation from this. One thing that everybody should sort of be concerned with in this fact is that those $1,200 stimulus checks were supposed to spur spending. So we gave everybody, the government, we gave everybody these $1,200 checks as a way to say, go out and spend it at local businesses, spend it on things that you need, on rent, on food. Just go out and spend this money. But what we've seen actually is people not spending that money, which is part of the reason that the Fed continuously has lowered interest rates. So what they're doing, in fact, is trying to lower interest rates so low that it's not worth keeping your money in a savings account, which Graham Stephan actually kind of alluded to in one of his videos. I think by people not spending their money, it's not helping our economy. So the stimulus that is supposed to go directly into our economy is not actually helping. And then in addition to that, I think we could have a real conversation about the issue with people going out of their way to make everybody apply for as many PPP loans and EIDL loans as humanly possible. So that grant money was actually specifically meant for small businesses, but I think a lot of other people took advantage of that. The money that actually should have gone to these small businesses to help them in this time of crisis didn't really go to them, and it went to other people that are now saving that money or investing that money separately. So the last thing that I think everybody should be concerned with is what comes with these stimulus checks. It's not actually just the stimulus checks in these bills. There's a lot of other information. And while I think we should be taking care of everyone, while I think everybody that needs help should get the help that they need to get back on their feet, and while I think that everything from a healthcare perspective the government is doing is solid, I think there's a lot of issues in the upcoming bills that the Democrats have put forward. One of the worst ones that I've seen is actually the real estate restrictions that they're planning on putting onto some people. So right now, there's a lot of people who can't pay their mortgage and a lot of people that can't pay their rent. So one of the proposed stimulus packages includes a section that for the next 3 or 4 months, I forget which, I'll have to look it up, I can leave it in the video description. For 3 or 4 months, renters don't have to pay their rent, and subsequently landlords won't actually have to pay their mortgages. But there's some stipulations that go with this. There are no just cause evictions, and there's actually rental price control. So I am a staunch believer that you should not have rental price control, even if you look at an average rate of inflation of 2%. Over a 5-year period, you're looking at a 10% loss on your money if you're not raising rents at least 2% over each year. I think that burden on the real estate market is not something that we can really handle right now. And I think that a lot of people that own real estate aren't really thinking that far out. And I know that a lot of people that own real estate will give their tenants, they won't raise their rents and everything like that. And I, as a landlord, wouldn't raise a good tenant's rents either way. But with that said, we need to be cognizant of the people that actually do need to raise those rents and do need to perform just cause evictions. I mean, it's something that we should be keeping in mind. Another thing that I think people should be focused about is the government spending in other areas. So right now we are considering medical expenses, and we're considering a lot of real estate restrictions and things like that, and we are considering sending those stimulus checks out again. But what a lot of people don't understand is that there are hangers that go on these bills. You should realistically, I know everybody doesn't have the time, but you should really go through these bills and actually see what they're adding on to these things. Because whereas you may hear $2,000 stimulus checks coming to everyone, and you may be excited about the prospect of you getting that $2,000, and you may actually need that $2,000. But the issue with that is you don't know what else is coming with that bill. I think on that same note, you should be considering the infringement of rights that are going to be happening. I know I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast recently, and he said once they take those rights away, you never really actually get those rights back, because the government actually really isn't in the business of giving you those rights back. That's a salient point. I think the government's goal right now is to solve this problem. I think genuinely people are trying to solve the problem of COVID-19. But I think the issue that comes with that is the government oftentimes will push up against your rights during times of crisis. And I know it's, people don't really tend to think about the United States from a historical perspective, but I think if we look back at the United States throughout history, they have a known strategy of pushing up against rights, especially with things like the Patriot Act during 9/11. So I think people should also be very, very cognizant of the burden that the stimulus bills bring with them. And when we allow the government to go no holds barred and pass these bills because we want the stimulus check, that might not always be in our best interest. So in closing, I would just like to say that I think it's a great idea if more people get involved in the conversation and more opinions are had. I think MeetKevin had a really amazing piece about that, and he did say that the more people that are sharing opinions, basically the better. And I share that same sentiment. I think the more people that, that see this and want to enter the conversation because they think I'm wrong or they think I'm right is great. And I think we should push forward on that fact. But I do think that we should be cognizant of all aspects to a discussion before we enter into it. I think the prospect of getting these checks, getting these $2,000 checks and $1,500 checks and $1,200 checks is great. And for the people that need it, we should be giving it to them. But I think for the people that don't need it and for the people that are fine without it and will just park it right in a savings account, I think we should be responsible adults and look back and say, yes, that $1,200 was great and it helped me when I needed it, but now we should turn down stimulus checks, in my opinion. So if you guys agree with me, leave a comment. And if you like this video, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.